What would the world be like without Easter? Well, we can say without Easter, there'd probably be no marshmallow Easter peeps, no Easter egg hunts, no Easter bunny, and much to the disappointment of the women in my family, no new Easter dresses to buy. But I think we can all do better than that this morning, can't we? Easter should, of course, remind us of the heart of Christianity. It was N.T. Wright who once quipped, "Take Christmas away, and in biblical terms, you lose 2 chapters at the front of Matthew and Luke, nothing else. Take Easter away, and you don't have a New Testament. You don't have a Christianity." By Easter, he, of course, means Easter as a celebration of the death and resurrection of Jesus. My fear, though, this morning is that this has become all too familiar to us. The cross is everywhere around us. It's in our churches, it's on our billboards, it's around our necks. If we're not careful, the symbol of the cross can become something akin to power lines. Think about power lines. We know that they're there, but we rarely think about the power and how they power the world around us. We might better feel the impact of power lines if we imagine a world without them. Darkness can often remind us of the light. Even this morning, if you've come here, and even if you're not a Christian, or perhaps some of you have come here this morning and you're struggling with doubts, I beg you to stop. I beg you to stop for a few minutes and consider what we learn if we imagine our world without the cross. The word cross itself was not even uttered in polite society in the first century. World changers don't die on crosses. Crosses were shameful. A great king dying on a cross, that was a stupid idea if there ever was one. The cross, as Paul wrote, was foolishness to the world. And yet it's this foolish cross, as much as any symbol, greater than any symbol, that has changed the world. Without the cross, we don't have human rights as we know it today. Without the cross, we don't have William Wilberforce and Hannah More fighting and ending the slave trade. A shout out to our very own Karen Pryor, I don't know if Karen's in here today, who recently wrote a book reminding us that it wasn't just men in this fight. Without the words, without the cross, we would have never heard the words, "Let freedom ring." And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Make no mistake about it, Martin Luther King grew up out of cross-tilled soil. Without the cross, we don't have science as we know it today. It's Christianity, not naturalism, which provides the foundation for science to flourish. Without the cross, we don't have much of the world's inspirational music. From Bach to Bono, from the lyrics of Mumford & Sons to the lyrics of John Newton's Amazing Grace, the Christ has not only inspired our music, the cross has gotten deep into our non-cognitive bones and shaped who we are. Without the cross, we would not have the Sistine Chapel or Da Vinci's Last Supper. We wouldn't have Madonna. No, not that Madonna, okay? the famous picture by Raphael. Without the cross, we wouldn't have heard the words of Aslan, or the tale of a young hobbit, or the redemptive heart of so many of our favorite stories and movies. Without the cross, the Naga people of East India would still be headhunters today. Now images of human skulls aren't hanging from their wall, but rather images of Jesus Christ. Without the cross, where would so many of us be? Without the cross, I'd be a very religious, American dreaming professor, pursuing the American dream with everything I have, but I would be spiritually dead without the cross. Without the cross, we are left with a world lacking the most important resources to deal with suffering and evil. During the terrible plagues of the 3rd century, most people abandoned their sick and fled. But it was those Christians, they were the ones who were known for refusing to leave their loved ones. They stayed in the face of likely death and even cared for the pagans whose families had left them. The early Christians sang hymns as lions devoured them. They forgave the very people who were executing them. One of the reasons early Christianity exploded is because these men and women in the early church, they knew how to die and suffer well for the gospel. The earliest Christians understood something that I fear we forget. They understood that the glory of the resurrection was first achieved through the suffering on a cross. Liberty students, Liberty faculty, Christ is calling us today in the same way he called these early Christians, not to wave our flag triumphantly in the face of those we disagree, but instead he is calling us to hang our flags on the very cross that we carry as we serve this world. The nice, traditional, consumeristic Easter has not brought redemption to the world. Let's not be confused this morning. The power has always been in the foolishness of the cross. The call of Jesus is to pick up that cross, that shameful cross, and come and die. Yes, at times the symbol of the cross has been hijacked to justify actions that were antithetical to the true meaning of the cross. The atrocities remind us that there is such a thing as real evil. Yet the resurrection reminds us that this world is not simply one giant cosmic accident. The resurrection gives us hope. It was not only the cross in the first century that was a foolish notion, it was also the resurrection. Neither the Romans nor the Jews found credible the notion of a single man in the middle of human history being raised to glory. It was not on their radar screen. So it's no surprise that the disciples didn't even think Jesus was actually coming back from the dead. They were scared for their own lives. Yet something happened. These men went from frightened to fearless overnight. Before the cross changed the world, it changed a very small group of frightened young men. In the face of darkness, in the face of evil, in the face of the trials and the suffering that's coming for each of us. And don't buy into the notion it's not coming for you. It's coming for all of us in this world. And it's okay to be afraid of that sometimes. And we are right to mourn. Jesus himself says, "Blessed are those who mourn." This world is not as it should be. But even as we tremble, and even as we mourn, Easter reminds us that we do so with great hope. because Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed.